Okay. Perek Shvi, Halacha Gimel, Hilchos Deios. Chapter 7, number 3, the laws of Deios. Omru Chachomim. Our rabbis had said, Shalosh Averos Nifroim Min Ha'odam B'Olam Hazeh. The three transgressions that there is a reckoning in this world. One has to pay the price of this world, this punishment in this world. And because they're so severe, one has no share in the world to come. Two things. You pay the price in this world, and you have no share in the world to come. So what I was just discussing with Bob, normally, when we say you're punished for a sin, it's what you create. Now we find, Rashi cites the Midrash, we had the red heifer is a statute that even King Solomon did not understand. He said it's beyond my grasp. What is the red heifer? If a person is contaminated with the dead, comes in contact with the dead, any other level of contamination, one is able to be relieved of that kind of contamination. If he meets certain criteria, then goes to the mikveh. Either immerses himself in a spiritual pool or in a natural body, like the ocean, a stream, which has an underground feeder. And you're covered from head to toe, and you're fully immersed, you relieve that contamination. When it comes to the contamination of the dead, you can immerse yourself in all the bodies of the water in the world. You cannot be relieved of that contamination unless you undergo the red heifer process. And the Torah speaks about it in the portion of Hilchos, which discusses the ritual of the red heifer, how it's done, who's qualified to do it, so on and so forth. So the only way it can be relieved with that contamination is only through the ritual of the red heifer. The sprinkling, they burn it, then they make special water, sprinkle it on the person, okay? So there, why only that particular has to be red heifer, fully red? If it has 2 black hairs on it, it doesn't qualify to be the red heifer. It has to be totally red. So Rashi cites the Chazal that in the name of Rav Moshe Darshan, he explains that at Sinai, we failed with the Chet Egel, the golden calf, which was idolatry. As a result of that, we became disenfranchised with the breaking of the Luchos, of the first tablets. We reinstated with the second tablets. But factually, even when we reinstated, it was not at the level of the first level. When we first said Nasa v'Nishma, received the Torah, the Jewish people were not subject to death. We would be eternal as Adam was before he ate of the tree of knowledge. As a result of the red heifer, which was considered of the golden calf, which is idolatry, we became diminished to the level of Adam after the sin of eating of the tree of knowledge. We're subject to death. Death is spiritual contamination. You come to contact with dead, the remains of a human being, you're contaminated. So we're only contaminated because we have that spiritual imperfection due to the golden calf. The only way we can be relieved of that is we undergo the ritual process, purification process, with the mother. The red heifer is the mother of the calf. And you burn it, whatever the ritual is, that's how you're relieved of the contamination that was created as a result of the calf. So the Rav Moshe Darshan says, what is it analogous to? You have a maidservant in a palace of the king. She has a small child, and the child soils the palace, which is considered a failing on the mother. You didn't take care of your child. So the king says to the mother, clean up the mess after your child. Clean up what your child soiled. Clean up the palace. Identically, the impurity which was created, which is death, which is the cause of death, is the impurity of the idolatry of the calf, the golden calf. Therefore, we take the red heifer, which is the mother of the calf, and that ritual will be able to relieve us of that impurity, which is the impurity of death, coming in contact with the dead. That's the understanding. Okay? But anything we any impurity that exists is due to our own doing. The impurity of death is due to we failed at Sinai. Any sin, if we speak about divine retribution, is due to our failing. God doesn't impose anything on anyone unless you created it. If you take an exam and you want to be acknowledged as somebody special, you have to get, you need more than a passing grade. You have to have a perfect grade, or pretty close perfect to it. Otherwise, person says, why? But I passed. Passing's not enough. You're not that exemplary student, that star pupil, because you didn't get that perfect grade. God doesn't want perfect. We should be perfect, even if those perfect. But if you do things which are imperfect, it has to be corrected, because you can only have relevance to the world to come if things are on a perfect level. So we have to weed out, we have to expunge the imperfection, the impurity, and only then could you enter into the world to come. So the whole concept of Gehenna is the purging process, is the expungement process, that the impurity that we created during our lifetime, you actually go through that process. After you finish being purified, then you enter into the world to come, having a relation with Hashem. What happens to a person, he failed so badly in this world, he doesn't have a saving grace. There's two things have to happen. He has to be punished for what he did wrong, but he has no share in the world to come. So the punishment, he says, takes place in this world. You have all kinds of setbacks or whatever they may be. That's the fraud, the reckoning is in this world, but after everything's said and done, there's no basis for a relationship. And because there's no basis for a relationship, you have no relationship with God in the world to come. That's Ein Lo Chevel Mabor. This is what I was thinking. But what I was thinking while I'm speaking to you, this is what I was thinking. We find, and Chofetz Chaim gives beautiful analogy. People are envious. It's something which most people are subject to some degree of envy. You work, you have a certain IQ, somebody has a similar IQ, similar background, similar profile, and somebody succeeds greater than you succeed. But that's okay. Person's not envious. What about whatever you do, you always fail, and he always succeeds? That's a much tougher deal. That's much tougher to deal with. I succeed, he succeeds greater. More power to him. It's fine. But I go, as much as I do, it's not I'm an underachiever. I don't cheat, period. And the other person, he's a star. It's pretty hard not to have some degree of envy. But if you believe that as long as you do the right thing and you do your best, that is success, because you can't do more. And you believe in God, that everybody's situation is tailor-made to himself. So even though you don't succeed in the material as someone else, it's not meant to be. You're not meant to be the wealthy man. He's meant to be the wealthy man. He's meant to be the genius. You have the average IQ. It's fine. You have to deal with what God doles out to each one of us. But yet a person says, look, the man's living high on the hog. And I'm low man on the totem pole here. When I walk in, they don't even notice me. And this other person gets all the accolades and the acknowledgement. It seems it's not fair. That goes through a person's mind. So he says, what is it analogous to? So he says, it's analogous because the Torah tells us that a person who's a Rasha is truly evil. God doesn't want him to have a share in the world to come. But if he did anything good in his life, he has to be rewarded, he has to be paid, his due in this world. The world to come, God doesn't want him there because the person's not even interested in going there. The person has no interest in having a relation with God, and God's not interested in having a relation with this kind of person. But the person has to be paid his due. So he gets his reward in this world. If we say normally a mitzvah generates a level of value that there's not enough time to live, years to live in this world to be paid, which it says in Pirkei Avos, so when the Rasha receives his reward in this world, what does he receive? Something which is beyond imagination. Mega wealth. Number one on Forbes. A home in every continent. You continuously booming, you're written up with all kinds of accolades, and you're so innovative, one of a kind of a person. You live in mansions. You have a Rolls Royce for every segment of the day. People say it's just unbelievable. These guys in Saudi Arabia, it's unbelievable, not to be imagined. So Chafetz Chaim says, what is it analogous to? There was this minister, and he spoke out of turn to the king. The king says, you will be punished. How are you going to be punished? We're going to build a palace, identical, a replica of my palace. Same furnishings, all the amenities. However, there's a prerequisite. You have to have windows that go from floor to ceiling, that everybody could look in outside to the inside of this palace. So people should see how majestic, how ornate everything is in this palace. And then we're going to lead the minister into this palace, have the king's tailor regal garments for him, and he's going to be in this palace. Except there's one condition. When he goes into this palace, we lock the door and he can't leave the palace. He's there, he's confined. Not at the end of the world. Talk about it's 100 acres. And he has everything there. But there's one secret. There's no food or water. So when he walks into the palace, which is fit for a king, with the regal garments, and he himself doesn't even know what's coming down the pike. Everybody's watching, the envy, they're being eaten up by envy. All the people watch. The man's basically a commoner. Why is the king giving him such wealth and such opulence? And so why? So the king says, just wait and see. A day passes, 2 days. There's no food or water in this palace. And everybody's watching from the outside. All of a sudden, 3-4 days pass. He's starting to turn pale. He has been hydrated, has been eating. A week passes. And he's literally dying of hunger. He starts gnawing at his own flesh. And he starts biting pieces of his flesh out of his body to sustain himself. 2-3 weeks pass. He looks so grotesque. People can't look at him. They can't look through the window any longer. And eventually he just shrivels up and he's just a pile of bones. Putrid pile of bones. So the Chafetz Chaim says, initially everybody thinks this is the ultimate of envy. But the man, they didn't understand. That he had this opulence, that was he was eating his own flesh. That the evil person gets all this unlimited wealth in this world, that's the share of the world to come. He's eating himself up alive. Once he dies, account closed. There's nothing left. He goes into the oblivion. He has no share in the world to come. He's not connected to the ultimate. That's Elohim L'mabo. But this sin, not only, God doesn't even build you the palace. It's so severe, this type of sin, that even in this world, the person's going to have all kinds of suffering. People have wealth, but they have tremendous personal issues. Give you an example. Kurt Waldheim. Remember Kurt Waldheim? He was the head of the UN. It was found out later that he was a Nazi. He was part of the SS. And eventually he was deported from the United States. The man was a Nazi. And this guy sitting at the head of the UN, passing judgment and orchestrating whatever it is. You can't be more evil than to have more evil background than this man has. He was deported. After he was deported, it was reported in the news, his wife and his daughter were going through the Swiss Alps and they were driving the largest Mercedes, and the Swiss Alps, I was never there. It's mountainous and very curvy roads. And his wife and his daughter, they made a turn and they went right off the mountain. His wife and daughter. I'm sure for him it was tremendous pain. Tremendous. A man who was part of a murder machine, not killing, a murder machine that killed 6 million Jews. Could you have any compassion for this man? And he was involved. He was an officer way up there in the SS. You have to have feelings. If he would, God forbid, cut your mother's heart out and your children, make them into mincemeat and feed it to dogs, could you have passion for such a man? any level of compassion. But in our day and age, people say, why not? But God is unforgiving. Unforgiving. There's reckoning in this world, and you have no share in the world to come. Sins. The three sins. One, there's reckoning in this world, and he has no share in the world to come. So you'd say a person is a murderer. There's nothing more precious than life. He has no value. He takes people's lives. Person's an adulterer. People have relationships with their wives. He's a free roamer. Couldn't care less. Life, families he destroys due to his uncontrollable desire for women. Idolater. God is the master, and you're barking up the wrong tree. Your benefactor sends you the cashier's check in the mail, and you thank the mailman profusely, and you forget about your benefactor. You understand? That's unforgivable. Whoever heard of such a thing? And it says, who sent it on the envelope? It says, signature return. You have to return it to the one who sent it. And you go and you thank and you worship the mailman. That's the idolater. God is the master, the benefactor, and the deity, which is only God's creation. That's who you worship. Therefore, these sins are unforgivable. Not to a person does it once. A person lives a life. He's an adulterer. He's a philanderer. He's a this. He's an idolater. He's a murderer. Right? He's a mafia person. Takes lives. Life has no value. These people, and God will reckon with them in this world. They have no share in the world to come. That's how extremely they're the antithesis of anything that God wants. And they're out to pasture and beyond that. And also a person who speaks Lashon Hara. A person who speaks destructive type of talk where it has no constructive value. Here it is. We're putting them on par. We're paralleling this with that. You'd say, are you out of your mind? What is one thing? We understand. Adultery, murder, idolatry. But Lashon Hara, first it's only words. And even if words, but still, I spoke negatively of a person. It has no constructive value. But it's as extreme. And even more. Rambam says, he's quoting Chazal. What are the three transgressions? Avodas kochavim, idolatry, gilei aroyos, violating the area of incestuous relationships and adultery, ushvichas damim, shedding blood, innocent blood, murder. V'loshen hara keneged kulam. But speaking Lashon Hara is the equivalent of all three combined. Keneged kulam. That's something which is intolerable. God's not going to tolerate that. Could you imagine you put it on? How do you even parallel it? I once mentioned a medrash. Alan remembers everything I said in the past. The medrash tells us that when Yaakov fled, he knew his brother is out to kill him for taking the birthright. He prays to God and says, Ushmorani. You should protect me. You should watch over me. What was he asking? Because he knew what kind of community he was going for. Two, and that community, the fare of the day was adultery, incest, murder, and idolatry. Watch over me. I should not be affected by the influences of that community. Because their values are not my value. And a person being impressionable, I need divine protection. A, B, C, and Lashon Hara. Watch me that I shouldn't fail in the area of Lashon Hara. Speaking negatively about other people, where it has no constructive value. Exactly what the Rambam is saying, what Chazal tell us. Lashon Hara keneged kula. So Yaakov also, when he's asking for protection, the most extreme levels of failing, and to top it off, and Lashon Hara. See, but it's not within the same classification of negative behavior, of transgression, but evidently it must be. Because Yaakov's saying the same thing. but the Ram adds what Chazal said, the Gemara says, it's connected Chulam. It's worse than all three combined. It's the equivalent of all three combined. How is it? Okay. You think for a moment. Person has tremendous, uncontrollable desire. And he crosses many lines. Physical desire, he has drives. A human being has every animalistic drive that exists within existence. We want to accumulate wealth, because wealth is power, material. It satisfies our ego, our desire, our passions, everything. Sexual drive. It can be so all-consuming, even it's adultery, incest. But again, it's part of the drive, and if you leave it unchecked, it gets out of control, you go there. But that's part and parcel of the person, because the person's an animal. Every one of us has an animalistic life source, and that's what drives us. Whether it's stealing, whether it's envy, whether it's sexual drive, it's idolatry. What's idolatry? If a person acknowledges that God is the master, who are you? You're only a pawn on the board. That's all you are. But every deity, how does a deity become a deity? A deity is deity because I've created the deity. Every idolatry, it's a human concept. I've discovered God with Judaism is a divine religion. We didn't make up the religion. God came to us, he dictated it to us. Every aspect of Judaism, every other religion, Lahavdil, I believe this man is divinely inspired. He is a reincarnation. Who knows what he is? So based on one's conflicts of interest and needs, we paint that mural the way we want to paint it. And we see it the way we want to see it. So also it's due to our human failings or needs to satisfy them, not to be constricted. You accept God as the omnipotent power, you march to God's beat. As a total nullification of oneself, a total subjugation to God. Idolatry, no. I only submit as long as he does my will. He doesn't do my will, I seek out another deity. So it's all driven from the person. Lashon Hara is not the same. It has nothing to do with animalistic drive. It has to do with evil in the person. What do you have to talk negative about another person? You want his wife is one thing. You want his money is one thing. You want to go against, you want his religion is one thing. But what do you talk negatively? Lashon Hara. It's unrelated. It's unrelated to the animal that exists within the person. That has to do with the persona of the human being. It's a failing the essence of what a human being is. As they say, live and let live. Whatever he is, what relevance does it have to do with you? What do you have to talk about it? Has no constructive value. Therefore, this encompasses all the evil. The others are attributed to something you have to control. Because that's the essence of the human being as an animal. The struggle is, does the intellect control the animal? Does the animal dictate the intellect? Those are the three cardinal sins. The fourth, it's not the animal involved. It's the intellect itself dealing with itself. What I want to perceive to be, what is and what's not. Therefore, the failing of the fourth is greater than the failing of all of them combined for that reason. Alan, any comments?